The story begins far from the centers of power. Not in Moscow, not in Rome, not in a cathedral full of gold, but on a cold island in Alaska where the sea could swallow a boat, where winter pressed against the windows, and where a quiet monk became a father to people others treated as expendable. His name was Herman. He crossed the world as a missionary, but he did not become remembered because he conquered anything. He became remembered because he protected, prayed, taught, suffered, and loved. In Orthodox memory, Saint Herman of Alaska became the first glorified saint of North America. Before Alaska, Herman belonged to the monastic world of Russia. Tradition places his birth in the 18th century, often around 1756, though some details of his early life remain uncertain. His birth name is not securely known. What is remembered is the direction of his life. He entered monasticism young and was formed in the spiritual atmosphere connected with Valam and Russian ascetic life. That uncertainty is important. Hagiography does not always preserve the facts modern audiences expect. Sometimes it preserves the shape of holiness, a young man leaving the ordinary path to become hidden in obedience, prayer, and repentance. In 1794, a group of Orthodox missionaries traveled from Russia to Alaska. It was one of the longest missionary journeys of its time, across land, water, wilderness, and empire. Alaska was then Russian America, and the mission did not arrive in a simple world. Commerce, exploitation, native communities, colonial ambition, and spiritual hunger were tangled together. Herman came not as a politician and not as a company man. He came as a monk. That difference would matter because the people of Alaska did not only need someone to preach at them, they needed someone who would stand with them. The Alaskan mission was not romantic. The native peoples faced pressure from Russian-American commercial interests, disease, labor demands, and cultural disruption. Herman saw suffering that could not be solved by pious language alone. He taught the faith, but he also defended people from abuse. He wrote, pleaded, intervened, and became known as a protector of the vulnerable. This is one of the strongest parts of his witness. Holiness did not make him indifferent to injustice. It made him more responsible before it. Herman eventually settled on Spruce Island, which he called New Valam. There, he lived simply, prayed, worked, and received people. His world was small by worldly standards: a hut, a garden, the sea, the forest, children to teach, neighbors to comfort, services to pray. But small places can become spiritually vast when love lives there. People came to him not because he had rank, but because he had become trustworthy. He was poor, but not empty. Hidden, but not absent. Alone, but not closed. One of the tenderest parts of Herman's memory is his care for children. He taught them, fed them when he could, and treated them not as a mission statistic, but as souls. In some accounts, children gathered around him with trust and affection. This matters because missionary history can become abstract very quickly: dates, journeys, organizations, jurisdictions. Herman's life brings it back to the face of a child who needed bread, teaching, shelter, and love. For him, the gospel was not only announced, it was carried in hands that served. Orthodox tradition preserves miracle accounts connected with Saint Herman: protection from fire, prayer against flood, healings, and help given after his repose. These stories should not be treated like spectacle. They belong to the memory of a people who believed this monk had become a father before God. Whether the story is told beside a grave, on a pilgrimage boat, or in a church classroom, the meaning is the same. Herman's love did not end at the edge of his hut, and it did not end with death. The darker side of the story is the pressure of commerce. Russian America was not only a mission field. It was also a place where furs, labor, and profit shaped decisions. Herman's holiness appears most clearly when we see him against that background. He was not powerful in the worldly sense. He had no army, no wealth, and no office that could force obedience. But he had moral courage. He could tell the truth. He could write on behalf of those being mistreated. He could make the vulnerable visible. Saint Herman reposed in the 19th century, but his memory did not vanish. The people continued to remember him. Pilgrimage to Spruce Island became part of Orthodox life in Alaska. In 1970, he was glorified as a saint, and his name became inseparable from the Orthodox story in North America. He is sometimes called a North Star, not because he dazzled the world, but because he gave direction. He showed that holiness in America did not have to begin with power. It could begin with a monk, a hut, and love for forgotten people. The story of Saint Herman asks a simple question: who stays when a place is hard, poor, cold, and ignored? Herman stayed. He stayed with the people. He stayed in prayer. He stayed in poverty. He stayed when holiness meant not escape, but fidelity. This is the saint's stories of holiness, suffering, courage, and grace. Subscribe for the next life, and remember that sometimes the greatest missionary is not the one who speaks the loudest, but the one who refuses to abandon the people God has placed before him. One reason Saint Herman's story still matters is that his compassion did not remain private. He was remembered as someone who intervened when vulnerable people were mistreated. In the world of Russian America, where commercial interests could reduce human beings to labor, debt, and inconvenience, Herman's voice became a defense. He did not have political machinery behind him. What he had was spiritual responsibility. The monk who prayed in solitude also wrote and pleaded for people who had little protection. That combination is deeply Christian: silence before God, then courage before injustice. Calling Spruce Island New Valom was not a sentimental name. It meant Herman carried a whole spiritual inheritance into the wilderness: the prayer of the Russian North, the discipline of the monastery, the memory of elders, the rhythm of fasting, labor, services, and tears. But he did not build a replica of Russia. He planted a small monastic witness in Alaska. That matters because holiness is never just geography. A place becomes holy when prayer takes root there, when suffering is offered there, when love is repeated there so faithfully that the land itself begins to remember. After Herman's repose, the memory of his care continued among the Orthodox faithful of Alaska. Pilgrimage, stories, icons, prayers, and local devotion kept his witness alive long before most outsiders knew his name. This is how many saints are remembered. Not first by institutions, but by people who say, "He helped us, he prayed for us, he belonged to us." When the church later glorified him, it was not inventing holiness from nowhere. It was recognizing a memory that had already been living among the people. The saint had stayed, and the people had not forgotten. Saint Herman is powerful because he belongs to forgotten places. He is not the saint of impressive platforms, polished reputations, or easy applause. He is the saint of cold islands, poor children, exploited communities, quiet prayers, and small acts repeated when no one important is watching. That makes him a saint for many people today. Not everyone can change an empire. Not everyone can stand at the center of history. But a person can stay faithful in the place God gives them. A person can protect one child, write one honest letter, feed one hungry neighbor, and refuse to let love become abstract.